1,000 years. That's what many of us were taught to call the Dark Ages, the long stretch between the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the dawn of the Renaissance. When you flip back through that era, the first sensation isn't darkness so much as emptiness of silence where we expect noise. Empires fell, peoples moved, kingdoms rose, yet the story we inherit feels thin, filtered, and sometimes missing. We're told Europe slumped into superstition, forgot how to build, and waited a millennium for the lights to come back on. But who decided it was dark? And how much of that darkness is the absence of evidence? And how much is the evidence of absence what was chosen, curated, delayed, or never shown to us at all? When Rome's secular backbone collapsed, one structure kept its shape, the Christian Church. In a landscape of shattered roads and fractured provinces, monasteries became islands of ink and parchment. They preserved, copied, and taught often in ecclesiastical Latin, a language mastered by a clerical elite. If knowledge survived, it survived in their scriptoria. That was a rescue, yes, and also a gate. Because whoever controls the copies controls the canon, and whoever controls the canon can narrow the memory. Think about the moment of collapse. In 476, the young Emperor Romulus Augustulus was deposed. No funeral for the empire. No clear end credits. After that, the record thins. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough to leave long stretches of haze in Western chronicles. Meanwhile, the East hums. In the Islamic world, hospitals, algebra, optics, and astronomy advance. In China, block printing, paper money, poetry, porcelain, navigational breakthroughs. So why does Europe alone look quiet? One answer, it wasn't quiet, it was selective. What didn't serve theology or immediate utility could be ignored, postponed, or recast as miracle rather than method. Power loves pace. You don't have to destroy knowledge to control it to can slow it. A culture that copies commentaries and forbids certain questions will still feel busy while moving in circles. Curiosity becomes risky, promotion requires orthodoxy. Access to shelves becomes a privilege, not a right. Over generations, that produces the illusion of stasis. Not because people lacked minds, but because minds were steered. Some push further with a controversial idea, the phantom time hypothesis. It claims parts of early medieval chronology were misstated or added hundreds of years that don't align cleanly with archaeology or astronomy. Most academic historians reject this. Still, the theory forces useful questions. Where records are sparse, who set the dates we now take for granted? Calendars weren't neutral, they were tools of administration and ritual. When an institution sets the feasts, the fasts, and the year count itself, it also anchors memory. If you want a less incendiary route, look at what we can document. Controlled transmission. The index of forbidden books existed into the 20th century. Trials for heresy, pressure on astronomers, red lines for biblical interpretation, these are matters of record. Giordano Bruno burned. Galileo recanted. Others were discredited, confined, or simply erased by silence. Not all knowledge was destroyed, much was delayed. Delay is a soft weapon, the truth arrives only later and under supervision. Maps tell their own tale. Early modern charts claim ancient sources with surprisingly precise coastlines. Whether or not every claim holds, the broader point stands. The pipeline from antique knowledge to Renaissance rediscovery ran through hands that chose what to copy and when to circulate it. Even our mental movie of the period Mud, Plague, which trials a looming cathedral owes more to modern art direction than to a balanced ledger of facts. Popular media makes the Dark Ages feel dark. Once a feeling sets, it becomes memory. But let's complicate the picture honestly. The Middle Ages weren't pitch black. Agricultural yields rose with heavy plows and horse collars. Romanesque and then Gothic engineering pulled stone into ribs and light into stained glass. The Carolingian Renaissance standardized scripts so text could actually be read. Cathedral schools and universities emerged, where logic and disputation sharpened minds even inside theological frames. Trade leagues knitted seas and rivers back together. This wasn't a dead planet, it was an uneven archipelago with bright islands and long, foggy waters between them. The tension is not dark or bright, It's who held the dimmer switch. Monasteries preserved Aristotle, then taught him through commentaries that trimmed his edges. Ancient medicine survived, but anatomy met taboos. Astronomers mapped the heavens, but only so far as doctrine allowed. The timeline itself, Julian to Gregorian reforms, local regnal years, church calendars was stitched from systems with agendas. None of this proves a grand conspiracy. It does prove that memory is malleable when archives are gated and descent is expensive. Here's where the story gets human. Imagine the copyist monk who slips a secular poem into a margin. The physician who dissects in secret, recording what he dares not publish. The mason whose geometry becomes a rose window instead of a forbidden treatise. Knowledge didn't always vanish. Sometimes it went undercover, encoded in buildings, symbols, liturgy, and art. The best conspirators against forgetting were craft guilds and artisans, masons, navigators, metallurgists, instrument makers. They preserved technique when theory was off limits. Cathedrals are libraries in stone if you know how to read them. If you zoom out farther, the Renaissance looks less like a lightning strike and more like a controlled release. Manuscripts rediscovered, scholars sponsored, ateliers licensed, printers permitted. The church both opposed and patronized. It policed and it preserved. It condemned and it commissioned. That ambivalence is the real key. Treat the medieval church as one thing and you'll miss the story. It was many things at once: lifeboat and lighthouse, border guard and bridge. Our job now isn't to demonize or glorify, it's to remove the dimmer switch and flood the shelves with light. So what do we do with the fog? First, don't confuse gaps with nothingness. Absence of evidence is a research plan, not a verdict. Second, push for open archives, digitization, and broad scholarly access. If collections are private for preservation, then preservation must include public knowledge. Third, separate evidence from allure. Theories like phantom time are stimulating. The responsible move is to test, not to surrender to certainty in either direction. Fourth, read sideways. Arabic translations of Greek science, Byzantine chronicles, Chinese astronomical logs, merchant ledgers, ship inventories, monastic building accounts. Peripheral records often outlive official narratives. Ask harder questions about the stories we've absorbed. Were miracles sometimes labels pasted over engineering? When a text is called apocryphal, does that mean false or merely unapproved? When a chronicle repeats a familiar arc under new names, is it continuity, copying, or convenience? When a period is branded dark, who benefits from the contrast? Here's a picture I find more honest and more interesting. After Rome, Europe didn't die, it reorganized. Power moved from marble halls to wooden cloisters. Ink replaced imperial edicts. Roads narrowed, but river routes thickened. Knowledge pulled in rooms with rules. Some rules protected treasures, some rules locked them away. Light survived, but it was filtered through narrow windows. Outside those windows, other lights burned: Damascus, Cordoba, Constantinople, Chang'an. Eventually, winds shifted, caravans lengthened, seas got busier, presses bit into paper, and the filters cracked. The light that spilled out looked new because we had been kept from it by poverty, by war, by caution, and yes, by control. That's not a story of pure villainy or pure virtue. It's a story of how cultures hoard and spend knowledge, how institutions protect and police it, and how ordinary people keep little flames alive when nobody's watching. So here are my questions for you. If sealed archives could solve 100 historical riddles, should any institution, religious or secular, keep them sealed? If darkness was partly curated, what else in our timelines is a product of framing rather than fact? And if we're serious about learning from the past, are we willing to demand that the shelves be opened, digitized, and made readable to anyone with curiosity and a screen? If this made you rethink the Dark Ages, tell me what you'd investigate first: astronomical logs to test dates, ship ledgers to track forgotten trade, or the marginal doodles of bored monks that sometimes hold the only glimpse of a lost book. Like, subscribe, and share if you want more deep dives that peel back labels and look directly at the page's smudges, gaffes, and all. Because history doesn't need our belief. It needs our questions. And the more light we pour on the shelves, the less room there is for darkness to hide.